Hello and welcome back to the Extra Crank. It was 8 weeks ago to the day that I rode my brand new Enduro bike for the first time. I even brought you a video from that day that's actually gone on to do quite well in the end. It was a day of firsts for me, my first time on a carbon mountain bike and my first time on 29-inch wheels. But today, some 2 months and 12 rides later, I'm here to give you my honest thoughts on this burly beige bike. If you're thinking about buying one of these, you need to watch this video. I'm going to try and avoid all of the magazine type press pack language and give an owner's insight into what it's like to buy, ride and own the 2020 YT Capra 29. The good, the bad and the ugly. Maybe you own a YT. Do you agree with my opinions in this video? Please let me know in the comments below. Maybe you're thinking of buying one. I read every single comment and will answer as best as I can, so please fire away. I only ask that you hit the like button so that the YouTube overlords deem my content worthy to promote to others. And consider subscribing to my channel to help me unlock new audiences and inspire as many people as possible to get involved in mountain biking. So, on that positive message, let's drop in with the 5 things I love about this mountain bike. First in at number 5, I have buying it. I love buying this bike for a number of reasons. Firstly, the super easy to use website, the regular shipping updates, the packaging it came in, the ease of assembly, the instructions that were awesome, and although my bank account maybe didn't love this purchase, it didn't hate it as much as if I'd have say bought a similar spec bike from Trek, Giant, Specialized or Santa Cruz. In the end, including shipping, the pedals, a spare derailleur hanger, the bike box, this bike came in at £2,956.70. Now, obviously, this is not cheap, but relative to the competition, this is unbeatable. The only other bikes that come in close in terms of value are those from Canyon and Vitus, but model for model, price point for price point, spec for spec, the YT came out ahead. Next up in 4th place in the list of things I love about the Capra, I have the flip chip. Adjustable geometry is nothing new, and plenty of bikes come with it. Canyon even lets you adjust on the fly with its patented shapeshifter technology. But for simplicity and lightweight, YT opted for a super elegant solution. An oval shaped eyelet that can be installed in either direction and effectively changes the shot length by a few millimeters. It takes a few minutes and to be honest I wouldn't want to risk dirtying the threads, so I wouldn't class this as an on the trail adjustment, although if you really wanted to you could with nothing more than a multi-tool. I have this set in the high position. That is the eyelet in the forward direction. It's still got the lowest bottom bracket and slackest head angle of any bike I've owned at 360mm and 65.5 degrees. If you do slacken it out, you can drop the bottom bracket by a further 10mm and take off another half a degree of head angle. Most of my riding is technical, low to medium speed trails, and so for me, agility is more important than outright stability. So I probably won't be changing it until I get some gondola laps booked up at Fort William, for example. However, another reason I love this flip chip is because I believe this is a top secret hidden hack to support the growing craze that is the mullet bike. See, the geometry change between this bike set up in 29-29 and the flip chip in the low position is almost identical to a 29-27.5 setup with the flip chip set in the high position. I did the maths and you can too, and the numbers come out far too close to be a coincidence. Who knows, maybe one day I'll run a mullet setup and see for myself out on the trail what all the fuss is about. Coming in 3rd place, I have the wheels. Running 29-inch wheels has been a positive experience for me, but to be honest, there's loads of analysis out there about 29-inch wheels. What I mean in particular is that these wheels have really impressed. The bike comes with E13 LG1 Enduro wheels with a 30mm profile. I was under the impression that running bigger wheels was going to mean more flex and perhaps a bit of cornering unpredictability, but the reality could not be further from this. These wheels are stiff, more so than the 27.5-inch Hopetech Enduro wheels on my old bike. These are also bomb-proof, so far anyway. I've not been light on these wheels, and while I haven't been sending road gaps or dropping to flat, I have landed sideways a number of times, and some poor line choice has resulted in some pretty sharp impacts down the rocky techie trails up here in Aberdeenshire, but these wheels remain as true today as the day I got them. I haven't even had to adjust any spokes, not a single dent in the rim, front or rear. Also, loads of bikes ship tubeless ready, but sometimes a tubeless specific rim tape is needed. Not with these, not with this bike. I literally had to take the tube out, put in some sealant, swap in a set of tubeless Presta valves and pump it up. Quick, clean, easy. And these tyres hold air perfectly. Speaking of tyres, if you read reviews, you'd be forgiven for thinking that these E13 LG1 tyres were made from endangered whale blubber, the amount of hate that they get online, but honestly, they're super grippy and match the tread pattern and performance of a Minion DHF pretty well as far as I can tell. Although I'm not quite sure why everything in E13's lineup is called the LG1. In 2nd place, we have the brakes. SRAM code brakes are just awesome. Unless someone wants to demonstrate to me that the guides have stepped up to the plate in the last 3 years, I'm dead set on these being the best brakes that come equipped on these sort of bikes. In fact, that was the tipping point that made up my mind between this and the Canyon Strive. For the equivalent price point, that shipped with guides, this shipped with codes. So, right decision made, in my opinion. Paired with 200mm rotors front and back, these make pretty light work of stopping this bike that isn't exactly the lightest, and when you add all 80kg of me and my gear and the higher angular momentum of the bigger wheels, I believe you really need a set of brakes that will inspire confidence. The better you are at slowing down, the faster you will go, and so for that reason alone, these are probably my favourite single component on the bike. Before I tell you the top thing I love about this bike, I want to throw in a few honourable mentions. The ODI grips, they seem to have their own gravitational field almost to a fault. They're actually already wearing when my palm makes contact with the rubber, and I'm forever rubbing little bits off my hands and gloves, but if like me you think of grips as a wear part, you'll be glad of the confidence. Also, the 150mm Postman dropper is the best dropper post I've ridden on a bike. I think it's better than the Reverb, better than the KS Lev, and I don't know if these are just a rebrand of these better known brands or if YT developed it themselves, but honestly I don't care. The lever action is so easy and the rate of rise can be easily modulated. Rotational play is minimal and it's almost silent. Aesthetically, I think this bike looks good. Not Santa Cruz or Yeti good, but good. Also, I promise the colour is better in the flesh than in the weird warehouse lighting they must have had for the pictures on the website. But it is beige, but I happen to like beige. The number one thing I love about my Capra is the ride characteristics offered up from the ultra progressive 4-bar linkage. 160mm of rear suspension, and I really wanted to avoid all of the press pack magazine jargon bullshit, but the suspension actually feels bottomless. It feels more composed over rough descents than even my 2011 Demo 8 downhill bike. I think this is because of the combination of an air shock that naturally gets stiffer as you go through the stroke, and the suspension design that has a reduced leverage on the shock as you progress through the travel, meaning that suspension feels firm right when you need it. I've ridden the same trails as this as I did on my previous bikes, and the difference is astonishing. Tower descent at Kirkhill is a great test of high-speed stability and suspension performance. With the Capra, I have no chatter, no unexpected kickback through the pedals, and a sort of self-aligning tendency that just wills you to push a little bit harder. Straight out of the box, with the sag set correctly, this bike will keep you right when the going gets rough. Like many good things in life, this gemstone of a bike has its flaws. I'm not a hateful person, but spend nearly £3,000 on a bicycle and you suddenly expect a lot. So that being said, here are the top 5 things I hate about my Capra. Very quickly, if you made it this far, thank you. Please leave a comment, press like, and consider subscribing to see more content. At number 5 on the naughty list, I have the chainstays. The YT is all carbon, including the rear triangle, so the chainstay protector is a really vital piece of kit. However, after just a few rides, the glue that holds on the rubber protector has started to peel, and dirt and water have all migrated in. This is an awkward problem because I take extra care when cleaning to make sure that no grit remains in there after every ride, fretting away on the carbon, but in doing so, it ends up peeling back a little bit further. So I could re-glue it, but honestly I have no idea if super glue is compatible with the carbon or the lacquer. So anyone in the comment sections has any experience with that, please let me know. Sticking with the chainstays, the boost hub spacing that has become all but the main standard for enduro bikes means that the rear on this bike is pretty wide. For the slab-footed of us, that means heel clipping on the chainstay and also on the seat stay to an extent. I can run my foot a little bit wider on the pedal or with the toe in slightly, but that feels horrible, so the rub is just the lesser of the two evils for me. I run 510 shoes, and the grippy stealth rubber has a habit of transferring onto the frame. Scrubbing removes some, but not all of this marking, so basically, I now have a tattooed bike. At number 4, I want to highlight the rear axle. The DT Swiss system is, well, it's no axle. No reassuring lever press, just twist and hope it's tight enough. There's a neat little lever rotator that lets you return the lever back in line with the chainstay, but really that's fixing a problem that there's just no need to have. I made a video of my first trip to Hill of Fare. Although I didn't mention it in that video, it turns out that I actually rode Kevin Spacey with a loose rear end. I'm hesitant to over tighten as it's a carbon frame, but it's a manual lever, so there's no torque wrenching possible to make sure it's at the correct tightness either, so I'm getting anxious just thinking about it. In third place, in the list of things I hate about my Capra, it's the limited suspension adjustability. Now, arguably, this doesn't really belong here because this is one of the compromises I willingly signed up to that allows this bike to be such a phenomenal value machine, but still, I like a good complaint. At the front, the base model Fox 36 has low-speed compression damping and a low-speed rebound adjuster. The compression adjuster also acts as an effective lockout for the climbs. However, if there is a middle ground in this adjuster between open and locked, it's a subtle one, and I've not yet quite found it. At the rear, the DPX2, it's a similar story, except that there are 3 distinct compression damping positions: descent, trail and climb. All do their job well, but for a bike that is expected to climb to the top of world-class enduro descents, the lack of a rear lockout is something that I really notice. Runner-up in the race that nobody wants to win, I want to highlight the rearward weight bias. Now, let me get this straight, I bought the right size frame. At speed, in a straight line, the confidence is incredible, game-changing. My whole body opens up over this bike, and my riding has taken a step up as a result. For reference, this is a size large, and I'm 5'10". But with the longer reach and the relatively short swing arms, inevitably my neutral stance on this bike yields a weight distribution over the rear wheel more than over the front. This is in stark contrast to my old bike, the Focus Sam. That had quite an aggressive forward trail geometry. And actually I liked that, or at least I'd gotten used to that. It had neutral cornering dynamics rather than the understeer tendency of the Capra. The reality is though that this bike is faster for it, but I have to consciously move my weight forward to get neutral, predictable cornering on loose terrain, whereas my muscle memory just tells me to stay put. I'm not saying that's why I crashed, but there are some things I can do to stop this. Getting better at being dynamic forwards and backwards would help, but I could also firm up the rear suspension slightly and or soften the front to induce a little bit more dive under braking and hard cornering. I could also roll the bars forward a few more degrees, all stuff I'll be working on in the coming weeks. Before I tell you the number one thing I hate about this bike, I want to give you a few other things to consider that you won't read on the YT website. Firstly, the loam ledge. This little concave bridge in the frame, it just gathers mud. Any residual dirt from cleaning will just drip on that shelf over time, collect and leave a tide mark, so be prepared to give that a wipe down at least an hour after cleaning every single time. Not really YT's fault, but the current Invisiframe kit doesn't take into account the partial frame protection already installed from the factory. This means only about half of the kit can actually be fitted without removing what was already there, so for those of us that don't fancy it, there are some unprotected areas. Despite ordering at the checkout and being charged, there was also no spare mech hanger in the box. YT customer service was excellent, and with no questions asked, they shipped it separately. This did take some time, I think 6 weeks from when my bike arrived, but I didn't bend my hanger in that time, so I'm not really bothered. So, here we are then. In first place, the number one thing I hate about the 2020 YT Capra. Incredibly, there's no water bottle mount. Like, nothing. Ben Cathro made a video a couple of years ago on the things he loved and mildly disliked about his Santa Cruz Hightower. In that, he mentioned his annoyance that he could only get a 500ml water bottle on his frame. Watching that made me both jealous and thirsty in equal measures. For a bike capable of holding its own on EWS rounds, this just must have been a design oversight. Now personally, I don't mind carrying a hydration pack and a rucksack, but there are many times when I prefer not to. So, put simply, if you are considering this bike, you must understand. If you get this bike and don't carry a rucksack, you will not be drinking anything on your ride. So, to wrap up, first and foremost, this is an awesome bike. It's unlocked new levels in my riding in just the short few weeks that I've owned it. Second, I'm not an expert rider and I'm by no means the authority on what's right and what's wrong. I do think though that the points I've mentioned are pretty universal, and I suspect I represent a kind of average customer for this bike. Finally though, the most important thing about this bike is exactly the same as for any bike, any manufacturer, any budget. And that's the way it makes you the rider feel while you're rolling along your favourite trails. And to be honest, that's not something I can tell you on YouTube. You have to go feel it for yourself, and when it comes down to it, it's the same feeling I have today on this Capra as I had with every mountain bike that I've ever owned. So, until the next time, I've been the Extra Crank, and I'll see you on the next one. Canyon even lets you adjust it on the fly with its patented shapeshifter technology. Nearly said shit then, I'll do that bit again.